Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Creepyoticals series. And in this series, this is where I talk about people watching. I do some gossip on this series, and I want to talk about the hidden psychology of feminine privilege. So, I never actually knew that femininity could be perceived as a privilege until I came on YouTube. And the way that I discovered that was because a lot of my detractors, who unfortunately tended to be unambiguous black content creators, they would constantly comment on my femininity on this YouTube channel. They would comment on like the femininity of the women that I use as examples of exoticals. And the fact that they would randomly bring up femininity whenever they discussed pretty privilege or mixed race exoticals, light skinned black women, dark skinned women with looser hair textures. The fact that all of these women kept randomly associating these things with femininity, it caused me to start to believe that there actually is a such thing as feminine privilege. So my theory is that if you have pretty privilege, you are automatically going to have feminine privilege because if you think about femininity, people associate femininity with beauty. People associate beauty and femininity with kind of the same thing. So I decided to be a creepyotical and kind of people watch my friends and also thinking back on some of my memories and trying to figure out like, okay, have I ever felt like I experienced feminine privilege? And I will say yes. And one of the main ways that I can think of experiencing feminine privilege is in terms of my clothing and fashion and style, and also in terms of like decorations. So, for example, let's talk about the mindset of a woman who has feminine privilege. I've noticed that if you have feminine privilege, you're not afraid of like being extra. And when I say being extra, what I mean is that you're not afraid of wearing pink. You're not afraid of wearing some high heels or maybe wearing a red lip or decorating your office, putting some flowers in your office and stuff like that. I've noticed that the women who have this mindset of, oh no, that's trying too hard, that's doing too much, that's being extra, those women tend to not have feminine privilege because they're too scared to try the new hairstyle. They're too scared to put on the lipstick. They're scared to wear the heels because it's almost as if they have been socialized to not outshine others. And I've noticed that if you have pretty privilege, other women will actually try to pressure you to dumb yourself down. They'll try to pressure you to like not be feminine. They don't want you to wear the dress because they know that you have a very nice body. So they know that if you wear a dress, you're going to be turning all the heads and maybe they're 500 pounds. And so when they wear a dress, they just look like somebody's auntie. But I've noticed that women who experience like this feminine privilege, they tend to have this mindset of who cares? Like I can wear what I want. It's almost like you're treating yourself like your own Barbie doll. So you get to dress how you want, you get to behave how you want. Another thing that I've noticed actually, and a sign of feminine privilege in my opinion, is being perceived as spoiled. I know that I've been perceived as spoiled even when I am not. I mean, how do you really know if somebody is spoiled if you don't know their background? Isn't that interesting? People will automatically assume she must be spoiled. She must think that she's better. Anytime somebody says you think you are better, I absolutely associate that with feminine privilege because what causes someone to think that they are better? Usually it is being spoiled. People are treating you in a certain way. They're putting you on a pedestal. People are complimenting you all the time. People are kind of like exalting you. They're listening to your opinions. People are watching you. You're hyper visible. So anytime people make comments like, you think you're better, you think you're all that, you're doing too much, you're extra, or even if they say things like you're spoiled or you're a brat, that's another thing people will say. Well, she's a brat or she's snooty, she's snobby. I associate that with feminine privilege because when I think about like child psychology, child development and stuff, I'm actually thinking of the cute, adorable little toddler girl and how her daddy just spoils her and gives her everything, so much so to the point where maybe she throws a little tantrum or she's kind of someone who has received the princess treatment since she was a child. And so that's why I associate being called spoiled with actually having feminine privilege because it means that you have someone in your life to spoil you. I mean, think about that. That's actually a compliment. That's actually not a diss if somebody says you're spoiled or you're a brat. Because what they're really saying is you have access to privilege. You have access to someone who wants to invest in you. There is someone in your life, whether it was your father, whether it was your family members, or maybe you come from a privileged background, so you're spoiled. So I actually associate that with being perceived as feminine and kind of having like this feminine privilege. Because when I think of a girl who is spoiled, I don't think of a girl who's ugly. I don't think of a girl who looks horrible or a girl who's unhygienic. If if I say the word spoiled, I'm actually thinking of a little girl who has a crown on her head. I'm thinking of kind of like these pageant queen. Remember the TV shows like Dance Moms and stuff like that? I'm thinking of those little girls who maybe they grew up in cheerleading. They grew up like having their parents give them everything. They have money or something like that. And so when I dive deep into the psychology of feminine privilege, I actually associate that word being spoiled or being a brat, being snobby, being snooty, being extra. I associate all of those words actually with feminine privilege because I've never heard anybody say that a homeless woman on the street is being extra or that she is very spoiled. But another thing I'm thinking about is there was this one time where I was hanging out with my friends. So I have friends where we like to go hiking together. We like to go and do all of these like physical activities. So hiking, camping, rowing, going on walks and stuff, going to yoga. And by the way, a lot of my closest friends, they are unambiguous black women, like in real life. So I remember one time, all of my friends, they all went running and I couldn't go running that morning. I think I overslept or something. So after they all went running, they went out to brunch and my cousin was going to be there and like a whole bunch of other friends. So I went to meet up with them and I didn't have on my running clothes that day. So I just dressed up in like a regular outfit, so not like a workout outfit. And I'm going to show a picture to kind of give you an idea of how I was dressed. So think of like an all pink outfit. It was one of those kind of monochromatic types of outfits. I had on a little skirt. I don't think I had on heels. I think I was just wearing flats, but I didn't think anything of it because I just threw that on and then just showed up to the brunch place. And I remember like when I walked into the brunch place, first of all of my girlfriends were there, but one of my friends, she had invited a bunch of guys. You know, okay, do you have any of those friends where like it's not fun unless there are guys there? So I've noticed that some of my friends are kind of like that. Oh, by the way, I feel like another part of having feminine privilege is like your friends or girls that hate on you and stuff, they won't tell you how formal the event is, or maybe they will like invite their guy friends, but then they don't tell you that there are going to be guys there because they think that if there are going to be guys there that you're going to dress up and like outshine them. I'm not saying that this is what happened in this scenario, but I just randomly thought of that. Have you ever been around those types of friends where they will specifically not invite you if there are guys there because they're like scared that you will get attention or they're scared that you will outshine them, so they will like try to randomly dress up and then they'll tell you, oh no, this is just a casual event because they want to kind of outshine you or whatever. And I'm only saying that because I've had women actually admit this to my face in the past. But anyway, back to the story. So I remember I went to this little brunch thing. I didn't think anything of it, but there were actually a lot of people there. So I didn't know that every single person that was coming from the hiking group was going to be at this brunch place. And so everybody else was kind of wearing like these hiking clothes. And because I didn't get a chance to go on the little hiking mountain run, I didn't wear my running clothes. I was wearing normal clothes. And I remember the only difference between me that day versus me and all of the other days was that my clothes were obviously more feminine because I was not looking all sweaty. I wasn't wearing just like some baggy running shorts and a t-shirt. I was wearing a little dress. And I remember when I first went into the brunch place, some of the people were asking my cousin, they were like, "Oh, who's that? Who's that girl over there?" And these were people that I hadn't met before. And my cousin, she was like, "Oh, this is my cousin. Everybody, this is my cousin." And it was almost like this celebrity treatment. And I feel like part of it had to do with me being dressed in normal clothing, me being dressed in kind of like this cute feminine outfit that day. So even though I didn't view it as being super feminine, they obviously viewed it as being very feminine because I also noticed when I sat down to eat, my cousins, they were like, "Oh my gosh, you look so pretty. Oh, your outfit is so cute. Oh, how did you do your hair? I need to do my hair like that." So they were kind of like, I don't want to say fawning over me because in my opinion, they were just being this is my family, so they're always nice, obviously. But I actually associate that with feminine privilege because you're being treated special or you are receiving a lot of extra attention and compliments and stuff because of a certain feminine aspect of yourself. And another thing that I happened to notice was so there were like some guys there. Obviously I was not interested because I'm not into like dusty random guys and stuff like that for obvious reasons. But anyway, I was there and I noticed that there was this one guy there that I had seen before, but he started acting all like super nervous. So you know those guys where sometimes they act like incels and like they can't look you in the eye and they can't like talk or anything and then they get like super embarrassed. And then I noticed that some of the guys they started trying to make fun of the other guys at the table, like they started roasting each other or like they started being super loud and boisterous. You know those obnoxious frat boys, like that sort of personality where they're showing out because they kind of want to show off in front of the woman. I just feel like if you are a pretty girl and if you are feminine, you naturally cause chaos wherever you go, and you're seen as a status symbol. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because when it came to some of the guys at this random brunch thing, even my cousin, she was like, "Why are you guys acting funny? Like, why are you guys trying to show out?" So she actually noticed that these guys' behavior, that they were kind of exhibiting almost like this toxic masculine, they were trying to be all macho or something like that, because she literally brought it up and like exposed them. And then one of the guys was actually like very embarrassed. And I'm actually associating it with feminine privilege because the way that I view the psychology of femininity is I view it as almost more of a behavior. So, yes, I do feel like the pretty privilege plays into it, but I also feel like the behavior is a part of it because even when I think about my personality versus some of the girls that I know in real life where guys are like mean to them or where other women are mean to them, for example, I noticed that like some of the girls who didn't like me in the past, whenever they felt threatened by me socially, they would try to be super loud. So these are the women who they will be extreme when it comes to getting attention. They will try to talk over me randomly. Has that ever happened to any of you guys? Because I feel like that happens a lot where if another woman is threatened by your social power, because beauty is a form of social power, any form of privilege is a social power. Okay, so feminine privilege, that's also a form of social power. So I've noticed that women who don't feel leveled up socially, they will actually try to dominate you in a social setting. So these are the women who they interrupt you when you're speaking. If you're wearing anything fake, they will call it out. This has also happened to me before. So this is really random, but I also feel like there was another time when I was in college and I had been growing out my eyelashes. I know that's really random, but one of my beauty hobbies is I like to make my own oils. So I will make my own hair growth oils. I used to make my own shampoos, conditioners, hair rinses, hair teas, anything you can think of. So I started making hair oils, but I decided to put some on my eyelashes so I could grow out my eyelashes. And then I didn't have to spend as much money on like mascara and getting my lashes done. So after about 3 months of wearing my little lash serum, my natural eyelashes got really long. And so then I remember there was one day where I put on my little mascara and my lashes, they really looked good. They actually looked fake, but they were my natural eyelashes. And I think I've told this story before where I was with one of my friends and we were in the elevator and there was this black guy in the elevator. He was friends with my friend and he was kind of looking at me. He was kind of looking at my eyelashes probably. And then my friend, she randomly is like, "Oh, Exoticals United, where did you buy your eyelashes from?" Like trying to, trying to call out that my eyelashes were fake. But that's actually a sign of having feminine privilege though, because having eyelashes, that's associated with femininity. Because when you think of masculinity physically, you don't tend to think of a man with super long eyelashes. Generally speaking, that's associated with traditional femininity. But I felt like deep down inside, the reason that she tried to embarrass me or call me out for having fake lashes was because she saw her friend, who was a black man, she saw him kind of looking over at me, and I didn't think anything of it. But I feel like that's actually a sign of feminine privilege because your feminine physical qualities actually attract attention. So when I use that term, feminine physical qualities, I understand that femininity is not a monolith. But unfortunately, when it comes to things like social privilege, anything that is based on a social construct is going to involve stereotypes. And so, yes, I know that stereotypes are bad, privilege is bad, but here on this channel, we talk about reality. And so, any physical qualities about yourself that others may stereotype as being feminine, that's a sign that you actually have feminine privilege. So, for example, it could be something with your physical appearance. It could also be something that has to do with your personality, because I've also noticed that, like, my friends who are very loud and like mean, or maybe they try to hit guys. You know those girls where they try to punch guys, and they do all this weird stuff for attention. It's actually very cringy. It's extreme pick me behavior in my opinion. But at some of these hiking groups that I've gone to, I've noticed that some of the girls, they will try to like punch the guy to get his attention. They'll try to diss a guy and like nag him to get his attention, or they will randomly start bringing up sex. They'll randomly start bringing up their sexuality or their butt. One of my friends, actually, this has happened multiple times. Unfortunately, they did happen to be black women. I've had multiple black friends where if there's a guy they're interested in, and let's say there's some music playing in the background, like at a brunch or at the bar or something like that, they will immediately start twerking, but not like the normal twerk, not just like, oh, a little bounce here and there. No, I'm talking about you are putting your face down, ass up, twerking, like in an inappropriate setting, like where nobody else is twerking. It's literally a random restaurant and their asses are in the air, because that is the level of desperation to get attention. So, unfortunately, I am going to have to call this very ghetto type of behavior, because I actually like to dance too. I love to dance. But I've noticed that whenever I dance, it tends to be in more of a dance setting. So if I'm in a sit down restaurant, I'm not going to climb on the table and shake my ass, because some restaurants will actually kick you out if you do stuff like that, especially if it's like a nice restaurant. And so even though having a booty, having an hourglass shape and stuff, I know that that's associated with femininity, but I've noticed that there are some women who don't understand social cues, and they don't understand timing on when and how to use their body or their femininity to gain positive attention. So I've noticed that a part of feminine privilege is actually a set of behaviors. So it's not always about just how you look. I do think a part of it is about how you act as well, because I've noticed some of the women that I know in real life, some of them are viewed as very trashy, even though they're not necessarily trashy, because I know them, and like whenever they're around girls, they're not trashy because they're their normal selves. But because of the way that they behave whenever there are guys around, especially if they're very desperate for attention, I've noticed that some of the guys will also view them as trashy, or people will be embarrassed of them. And that's another thing I've noticed. I've noticed that ironically, the women who are the most male centered are usually the women who are perceived as the most masculine. So that really sucks, because for those women, kind of these pick me women, it seems like they are doing almost like this performative femininity. So, randomly shaking your ass when it's not a setting to shake your ass. Or like going through these extreme pick me behaviors to the point where any normal person would be turned off by it, or they would view it as ratchet. I've noticed that for me personally, when I think about a feminine personality trait, I tend to think of a woman who sees other women as allies. So I think of a woman who's like, she's a girl's girl. She's very playful. I've noticed that I have a very playful side to my personality in real life, and even on YouTube. Sometimes I like to act like a troll. But I've noticed that I have kind of this playful, carefree spirit in real life, but whenever I see other women who struggle in their femininity, they lack that playfulness. They lack the carefree spirit. Those are the women who they constantly get angry at everything. They might be kind of like this political, social justice warrior to where everything is offensive to them. You go to a coffee shop and you drink French roast coffee, and then they start talking about how that's anti-black because it's French roast coffee. They need to have African coffee. That sort of thing, like the women who just kill the fun, they kill the vibes. I've noticed that even when it comes to personality traits, there are women out there who don't have any playfulness in their personality. And I think that a part of this goes back to their childhood, and it goes back to their mothers. So maybe their mothers were very maybe they had mothers who were struggling, whether it's financially, socially, or whatever. And so that girl, she didn't get the chance to enjoy her childhood. She didn't get the chance to be carefree. A lot of young women have been parentified. So being parentified, it means that from the time you were a child, you were taking on the parental role. So maybe your mom was not good at cooking or cleaning or taking care of you in general. And so you've been kind of working and muling from the time you were a child. So I've noticed that women who are like this, where they're used to being these workhorses from the time they're little girls, some of those women, they grow up into adults and they don't have that carefree spirit. So they're very uptight and they're very like easily offended or nitpicky. And so I've noticed that even when it comes to personality traits, some of the girls that I've seen in real life, they don't have that carefree spirit. And if they are trying to be carefree, they don't pick up on social cues. They'll do something very extreme, such as shaking their ass randomly when like everybody else is literally sitting down eating. And especially, by the way, no shade to you if you are plus size, but I know this one girl, she is plus size and she would do stuff like that, like randomly start twerking and shit. And it's like, sis, when people are eating, they don't want to see a 300-pound ass shaking in the middle of the aisle at the restaurant. And I'm sorry, but I had to stop hanging out with that girl because I don't know if I'm being stuck up or being a bitch, but like I can't really hang out with her very much because she has done too many behaviors to where I'm literally embarrassed by it. But another thing I've noticed about girls who are very feminine is that instead of constantly admiring other women, they know how to be their own muse. And so, for example, instead of like, you know, those women who critique other women's fashion and they critique everything about you, but then they themselves, they have no personal style. They don't know how to do their own hair. They don't know how to do their own makeup. They don't know how to look their best, but then they have the audacity to try to critique you. I've noticed that those women, they sometimes seem to lack a sense of feminine privilege because instead of spending all of that energy focusing on themselves and being self centered, they've decided to have that external locus of control. And so they're constantly focused on what are you doing? Are your eyelashes real? How did you get your hair like that? Is her hair real? What kind of outfit are you wearing? So they're obsessed. These are the friends who are obsessed with like what you're wearing and what you're doing. And then they get pissed off if like you look cute and stuff. And then they'll say like it's doing too much. I've noticed that those women, they don't have feminine privilege because they are not their own muse. They're actually not self-centered enough. They're not self-focused enough. So they're too busy focusing on what you're wearing and they didn't focus on what they were wearing. They're not focused on how they can improve their own appearance. And so a sign that you have feminine privilege is that you are that girl. But back to my random story about when I was meeting up with my friends from the hiking group and I was wearing a cute outfit. Another thing that happened was I noticed that some of my female acquaintances, they were doing that thing where it's like they were trying to overtalk me or they were trying to like make sure that these dusty guys didn't notice me. And it's really laughable to me that a lot of these girls, they were going through all of these behaviors all over some dusty basic men who were literally just a part of the fitness group. So I remember I was actually sitting at the table and I was just quiet, just minding my business because, you know, I'm not one of those types that's gonna like try to draw attention to myself because I genuinely did not care. So I was just eating my food or going on my phone or I would talk to some other girls that were at the table and stuff. And then I noticed when I was at the table that whenever I would speak, the guys at the table, they would get quiet and they would like look at me or listen to me when I'm talking. And so the other women, when they were trying to talk all loud and be like all ratchet and shit, nobody was paying attention to them. They were getting ignored. And so that's actually a sign of feminine privilege, in my opinion, because it's having a form of social power to the point where people listen to you. Have you ever noticed that when certain celebrities talk about getting beat up or getting abused or whatever, sometimes people listen to them, and then when another celebrity talks about the same thing, people don't listen to them? I feel like that actually has to do with feminine privilege. I don't think it has to do with skin tone or race or anything, unless, of course, the person associates light skin with femininity, and that's another video. I've got plenty of videos on that topic, but a part of feminine privilege is actually being heard. It is the power to speak and people naturally listen versus the women who are so invisible to the point where they feel like they have to yell and shout and scream and put their ass in the air just for something basic like a laugh Or, I've noticed that there are actually some women out there where they don't have a sense of humor. I also associate having a sense of humor with being carefree. So I've noticed that there are some women where they don't have a sense of humor. They're not good at like joking and stuff without offending people. They're not good at like charm. They don't have charm. That's the word I'm looking for. A lot of women do not have charm, and so because of that, they don't know how to get positive attention in a social setting. They don't know how to get positive attention in a multicultural setting. So, for example, with the whole twerking thing, obviously, the one girl that I knew that was doing this, she was black. And I think that that sort of thing, maybe it's funny or cool in an all black setting or something. So I'm not sure where she got that behavior from. I'm assuming that she got it from a black setting. So that behavior may be cool or cute or funny in a black setting, but in a multicultural, multiracial setting, different cultures have different cultural practices. And I actually do believe that your cultural background can contribute to your sense of humor. And so I've noticed that there are some people where they make these very trashy, vulgar jokes, and that has to do with their cultural background. And when I say culture, I'm not referring to race because it doesn't necessarily have to just be your race. It could be your socioeconomic background. Were you around a lot of perverted people? Do you hang out with a lot of creepy men or creepy people? Because all of those things influence your sense of humor. So I've noticed that the girls who lack charm, they lack this good sense of humor and stuff like that. They don't know how to make jokes and have fun and be playful. And so sometimes they will do random stuff and they will make themselves the joke. They will make themselves into almost like this caricature or this jester. You know how like the royal palace they always had like a jester or like the joker. Unfortunately, I feel like some women who come from these underprivileged African American backgrounds, they don't realize that they're making themselves into the jester. They're making themselves into the joke where it's like people are not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. And so I've noticed that some women who don't have feminine privilege, they don't understand social cues. They don't know like that there's a time and a place to have certain behaviors. And like I said, all of this is really just based on social constructs. I understand that femininity, it is still a social construct. Feminine privilege, that is still based on a social construct. But I think that when it comes to social status, if you care about social status, then yeah, you have to care about your social interactions. Another thing that I associate with feminine privilege is allowing yourself to make mistakes and being able to laugh at yourself. I view that as a part of being charming. So I've noticed that the girls who are viewed as feminine, regardless of their race, by the way, the girls who are viewed as feminine, they are able to be playful with themselves. So if they trip and fall or something, they can laugh at themselves. Or, if their favorite song comes on, they'll start singing the song, not shouting and trying to sing the song, because I've witnessed that sort of behavior as well, where for some girls that I know, like if their favorite song comes on, they will start shouting the song or like trying to sing the song super loud, like literally belting it out badly because they're hoping that people around them will notice them and be like, haha, you're funny. But once again, it's kind of like it depends on the setting, I guess, because not everyone wants to be subjected to random obnoxious behavior. I just feel like for some women, they don't know the line between being funny and playful versus being obnoxious and being very annoying. But I consider that to be a part of feminine privilege because it's playful. So you're letting people see you make mistakes. You're making these different cute facial expressions. I don't know why I tend to associate certain facial expressions with femininity or like knowing what facial expressions look cute on you. I know that's very random. Maybe it's because I used to do like modeling and stuff, so I'm aware of my facial expressions. I'm actually thinking of women who have an Asian background. I've noticed a lot of girls with an Asian background, they have very cute, very pretty, random facial expressions. So even if they're taking selfies and stuff, they may not be smiling, but they know how to make a cute facial expression. I associate that with femininity as well and with feminine privilege. I shouldn't call it femininity. I should be calling it feminine privilege because like I said, I do believe that if you're a woman, you're feminine because you were born a woman. But as far as feminine privilege in a social setting, then yes, even when it comes to facial expressions, knowing how to smile in a way to where it's like it looks good on your face structure. There are some women who literally they're not comfortable smiling, or they're not comfortable laughing, they're not comfortable making different faces, or they just have this very serious, very stoic face. I've actually seen some girls where no matter the setting, they don't feel safe, they don't feel emotionally safe. So I'm actually thinking of resting bitch face. Don't worry, I have resting bitch face, but I only use my resting bitch face if I feel emotionally unsafe. So, for example, if I'm walking down the street at night, I'm going to have my resting bitch face on because I don't want people to talk to me. But if I am in an emotionally safe setting where I'm with my friends or I'm with my family, or, I feel comfortable, I want to talk to people, I'm an extrovert. So I want to talk to people, I want to interact with people, then I don't have like this resting bitch face because I'm enjoying myself. I'm always smiling. A lot of people in real life, they'll be like, "Oh, Exoticals United, you're always smiling. Every time I see you, you always look so happy and like welcoming and warm." I actually associate that quality with having feminine privilege because it makes it easier for you to make friends. It makes it easier for you to get what you want. I actually was using my feminine privilege to my advantage the other day because I went into a vitamin store and there was this one guy working there, this one random kid, and he happened to be white, just for context. And I was looking for these vitamins and they didn't have my vitamins that I wanted. And I was like, okay, do you guys have this other vitamin? So I've noticed that like I'm not afraid to engage in a conversation with people, regardless of the person's background, whether it's a black person, a white person, an Asian person, whatever. And another thing that I noticed was when I was at this place, they had a sign that was like, "Oh, ask for a sample." But the sample, you can only get a sample of that particular vitamin. And anybody who knows me in real life knows that I'm a vitamin fiend. I love vitamins. I asked the guy, I was like, "Oh, do you guys have any samples of vitamins?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah, we have a sample of that vitamin." And then I was like, "Do you guys have any samples of like any other vitamins? Like, can I basically just get all of the samples of all of the vitamins in the entire store?" So I know that usually you can't do that. Usually, like, they have a rule where you can only get one or two samples, or you can only get three samples maximum. Anybody that goes into Sephora or any store knows that. So, but I asked the guy, I was pushing it. I was pushing my feminine privilege to the limits because I wanted some free vitamins. So I was like, "Yeah, do you guys have a limit? Like, if so, that's okay. I can just get like a couple samples." And he was like, "Oh, no, there's no limit. Like, I'm just going to hook you up with all the vitamin samples right now." But that's an example of having feminine privilege because you are expressive. You're able to express yourself. You're able to express your desires in a playful and respectful and like polite and fun way, to the point where you don't have to yell, you don't have to scream, you don't have to demand anything, you don't have to like just have a resting bitch face and then hope that that person can interpret your facial expression and like read your mind so that you can get exactly what you wanted. No, I feel like a part of feminine privilege when it comes to your social behaviors is you're actually a really good communicator. I believe that being a good communicator is actually a huge part of having feminine privilege. Another thing that I associate with feminine privilege is the way that I move my hands when I'm speaking. So I tend to talk with my hands. I don't do a lot of extreme stuff with my hands, but I've noticed that a lot of feminine men, a lot of feminine LGBT men will try to mimic the a lot of they'll try to mimic the behaviors of some of the feminine women, and I never even associated that with having a form of feminine privilege, but I think that that's a thing though. Kind of being more expressive and not being afraid to express myself, being able to show a range of emotions and a range of expressions in a way that makes me a multifaceted person, like showing different sides of my personality versus, "Oh, I only have three sides to my personality: resting bitch face, shaking my ass, or getting into a fight." That's a very limited scope of personality. And I really do feel like a lot of women, they don't develop their behaviors to the point where they can attain feminine privilege in a social setting. So a lot of women, they'll come online and they'll try to brag about femininity from a male-centered perspective, and then they'll be like, "Oh, well, I'm feminine because I have a boyfriend." And I'm like, that's what does that mean? Like, how do I know that you're feminine? You can't describe. Have you ever noticed that a lot of content creators, they will talk so much about femininity, but they don't describe what it is. They don't describe how to do it. They'll just basically say, "Oh, just wear these clothes and like be in shape," and then like stop cursing, as if cursing suddenly makes you masculine. And another thing I've noticed about cursing though, because I curse, I've noticed that I actually will curse a lot, but people in real life or even on YouTube, they don't notice how much I actually curse. I feel like that is a part of feminine privilege because if you do something that's associated with masculinity, you're so feminine to the point where it doesn't take away from your feminine privilege. So, for example, there are some women who they can wear short hair and it doesn't hinder their pretty privilege, it doesn't hinder their feminine privilege because they're already viewed as so inherently feminine and they already have so much feminine privilege to the point where she could shave her head bald and she would still be seen as gorgeous, feminine, beautiful. But what do you ladies think? How do you increase your own feminine privilege and how have you used your feminine privilege to your advantage? Like, have you ever asked for help with something, kind of like the damsel in distress type of femininity? Have you ever used your feminine privilege in a social setting, kind of like this queen bee type of feminine energy or this princess? I've noticed that I like to tap into the princess femininity a lot to where, I'm treated like a princess. Lots of people want to help me. They're naturally nice to me. I feel like I have a sisterhood with women in real life for the most part. So I've noticed I like kind of the princess type of femininity. What kind of femininity privilege do you prefer the most? Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.